In the past, I have been a rather frugal vehicle buyer. I have always viewed both cars and motorcycles as tools, which I choose for specific purposes. For example, in the past I have chosen to drive a base model pickup with a manual transmission and roll-up windows, because it got me back and forth to work just fine. I didn't need all that other fancy stuff. And of course, I chose a Yamaha Super Tenere and a WR250R partly because of their affordability, reliability, and ease of maintenance. However, when it came to replacing our Victory Vision, I knew this could very well be our last two-up terrain motorcycle, and I wanted it to be more luxurious and refined. As I've mentioned previously, I also wanted to downsize a little bit. Thus, we ended up with the 2018 BMW K1600 GTL because it is about 115 pounds lighter than my old Victory, and it still offers the comfort we are looking for in a two-up bike. I knew when I bought this bike that it would most likely cost more to maintain than my other motorcycles, and I was okay with that as long as it provided the level of performance and comfort that we wanted. After a lifetime of owning Toyotas, why not at least once get the Mercedes? Without a doubt, the BMW is going to be more expensive to maintain than our previous terrain bike. The Victory was a rather simple machine, and the routine oil changes at 2,500 miles were easy to do at home. So far, I have only had 2 services on the BMW, and I have chosen to take it back to the dealer both times. Partially because I am at the point in my life when I just don't want to do the work on the bike anymore, and also the service intervals are less frequent at 6,000 miles. My practice with the Victory was to do most of my own work between tire changes, and then once per year, or at least that's how it worked out for me, I would take the bike into the dealer for a new set of shoes, fluid changes, and a good once-over before hitting the road on a long trip. I envision the BMW to follow a similar path, and given the long service intervals, I will have most of my work done at the dealer. So let's look at the actual costs for the first service on both motorcycles. For the BMW K1600, the first service ran approximately $430.98. This was about $100 more than I expected based on the cost of my Victory Vision and Yamaha Super Tenere. The first service on the Victory actually ran about $275, but that was in 2009, and of course, prices have gone up since then. At today's prices, an oil kit for a Victory or Indian runs about $80, and then you would have to pay a couple hours of labor at about $140 per hour. The total cost of service would be about $360. As a side note, my Super Tenere ran about $325 for the first service. For the BMW, the engine oil and gear oil kits cost $162, plus 2 hours of labor at $119 per hour, totaling $400. Throw in $20 for shop supplies and tax, that totals $430.98. The BMW service was 17% more expensive than what a Victory or Indian would cost, primarily because of the cost of the BMW oil, the gear oil, and other supplies. So, did that service cost more? Yes, but is it outrageous in comparison to other bikes in this category? If I start breaking down individual jobs, such as an oil change, the cost differences between the two motorcycles are not going to be that dramatic. For example, taking the BMW and or Victory to the dealer for an oil change would look something like this. The BMW for the oil and filter would cost about $138.07, labor $119 for a total of $257.07. Victory, on the other hand, about $80 for the oil service kit and $140 for labor, totaling $220. So they aren't that much different. However, rather than do this kind of breakdown for each potential service, I think it is more useful to look at overall costs to a relatively similar amount of miles. Of course, the service intervals are different for the Victory and BMW, so I'm going to use my actual costs on the Victory to 20,000 miles, and that is when I changed tires out and I had a full service performed at the dealer. For the BMW, I will use the actual cost up to 7,000 miles and then estimate the cost for the next two services at 12,000 and 18,000 miles. The 18,000 mile service is when the K1600 will be due for its full top-end adjustment. So here are the actual costs for my Victory Vision up to 20,000 miles. Right, so you can see here that I have some of my oil change costs were at $80 for the kit and others were at $200 because again I took it in to the dealer. Total maintenance costs on the Victory Vision up to 20,000 miles was $3,275. Before I move on to the BMW, let me point out that this is not all I spent on the Vision. I also upgraded the pipes, added cams, a fuel controller, a timing wheel, performance air filters, there are two of them by the way, and I also paid for dyno tuning. With all of those performance upgrades, the Vision was still nowhere near as fast as the BMW is right out of the box. And all that cost about $3,000. Since none of that is about maintenance, I did not include those in the cost. But if you want the performance and you want the bragging rights, you are going to have to pay for it one way or the other. Another thing I should point out is that the BMW gets better gas mileage than my Victory did, at least after the performance upgrades. The Vision was consistently around 38 miles per gallon, while the BMW achieves about 41 miles a gallon. The result is that the BMW gets about 20 more miles per 6 gallons of fuel, which is the size of the Victory tank. While that is not much for an individual fill-up, the $2 saved on every tank will add up over time. But again, we are not talking about fuel costs, so here are the actual costs of the BMW up to 7,000 miles and estimates up to 18,000 miles, which I have highlighted in green. So you can see while there are fewer services that are done between this interval, that the overall cost is greater. My estimated costs for up to 18,000 miles on the BMW is $5,424. The bottom line is that I am expecting the BMW to be roughly 60% more expensive to maintain over the Victory Vision. There is no getting around it. BMW parts are more expensive than their US or Japanese counterparts, and there is more labor involved with each routine check. However, the biggest cost is that 18,000 mile top-end service on a deeply embedded 6-cylinder engine. You have to move a lot of stuff out of the way in order to get to those valves. While I know there will be those of you who are outraged at this and tell me how foolish I am, I remind you that I knew all of this when I bought the motorcycle. I know that some of you derive pleasure from being as frugal and cost-conscious as you can, and that is cool. Do whatever makes you happy. For me, I look in the mirror and I see a 62-year-old guy that, if he is lucky, has another 20 years to live. Maybe for the next 10, I will be able to ride at the level I can today. And after that, well, it's anybody's guess. When my riding days are over, will I sit around wishing I had not spent the money for that one last trip of a lifetime? Will I regret that I purchased this motorcycle? I am rather certain that the answer will be no. Rather than crying over lost dollars, I will be longing for the freedom of the open road. I will think back on all the bikes I have owned, the amazing places that they have taken me, and the wonderful experiences they provided. Hopefully, I will still be able to take my wife's hand, smile, and remember the times we spent together. I might even say, "Hey, do you remember that trip we took on the BMW? Wasn't that a fucking blast?" Ride safe, my friends.